So here we go. So she's all built up. 1997 CR80, and supposed to be a running bike when I bought it. Obviously didn't get him to fire it up, which is my own silly fault. I knew there was a problem with the gearbox, which is what I've sorted. And then she doesn't spark, and it looks as though the culprit is the stator. So anyway, rather than messing about, I've just gone and bought one of my trusty HPI ignitions. So these ignitions come with everything, an internal flywheel rather than an external. So the external that would have been on it was this one. So internal rather than external. I do think that these do rev slightly freer than your stock ones. So I've done quite a few HPI installation videos. They're pretty much all the same, but I'm going to do one for the CR80 anyway, just because that's what people kind of search for. So we'll try and be as detailed as possible, because in one of my previous ones someone said that the critical step that they were looking for they couldn't find, which I thought were there, but there you go. That's what we'll do. So the first job is, I've already taken the flywheel off. You use a flywheel puller similar to this one. Basically you take the nut off. You need an impact driver gun to do that, otherwise you just won't be able to undo it. And then you use a flywheel puller. Basically the fat bit of the puller screws into the outer of the flywheel, so here, and then you use this bolt to tighten down, and that presses on the end of the crank here, and then it forces the flywheel off. Sometimes they can be really tight. I try not to use any heat, but what I do if they're really tight is I'll give the bolt on the end here a whack with a hammer, and then it's just a case of, you know, just keep on slowly. Do not try and over force it, which can be difficult and sounds a bit counterintuitive, but it's just the way that you kind of need to go with these things. So slowly, bit of a whack with a nice metal steel hammer, and then they do end up popping off. And then once they're off, I'm going to take the stator off. This one's got a separate kind of timing sensor which tells it when to spark. Whip the coil off and everything, CDI off, and then I'll mount. In fact, so next video is I'll show you the stator plate, the new stator plate going on, and why I mount that in a certain orientation, and then we'll put the flywheel on, and it's those two bits that are going to do the timing for you. So that's going to decide when it sparks, and then after that it's just kind of mounting the various bits, the coil, the new CDI, and then wiring it up. Okay, so I haven't mounted this yet, but I wanted to show. So basically, the big thing to get is there are mounting holes which the original stator plate bolted to. And so the key thing is to make sure that the new stator plate, which is the red thing in the back, and that's what's different to a lot of these HPI kits. So generally the actual stator itself is the same. It's all the mounting hardware that is different. So it's quite a complex piece of mounting hardware that's on this. So what we're looking to do is to get these holes on this mounting hardware to line up with what would have been the original holes, and hopefully you can see that that does there and there. We're then going to take this, so we now know what kind of orientation. We're now going to take the actual stator plate off the mounting hardware. Then we're going to bolt that plate, the red plate, into the stator housing. And then the bit which I always find a bit of a flipping pain, and it does my head in, is this here. So this is where we want a nice seal from the elements, so from water mainly, and these kits don't come with that, which is a bit of a pain if I'm being honest. So what I generally do is I then generally carefully cut the originals to relieve, so I can remove the wiring from the originals, and then I make a bigger hole in, so there's normally only one, there is two with this particular example. I make a bigger hole so that this will feed, so that this wiring will feed through it, and then I'll use a bit of silicone or whatever to seal it up at the end, and that does do a good job, but it would be proper nice if they would come with the correct the correct rubber piece to just fit in and just make it all nice. But there we go, beggars can't be choosers, we can't have everything, right? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this stator plate off, and then I'm going to set the actual stator off the mounting plate, and then I'm going to bolt the mounting plate in, and then I'm going to mess about with these little rubber grommets, and then I'll catch up with you at the next stage. Okay, so here is, so we've got the stator mounted, and I've modified the little rubber grommets for the wiring. I say modified, it's not very difficult. You've got to cut the old wire out without damaging it ideally, which I've managed to do. Then you've got to slit down one side so that the new wiring fits inside it, and then we kind of seal it up with a bit of silicone, which I've done. Right, the next critical bit is we've got to work out which way the engine turns. So it turns anti-clockwise. Okay, so it turns anti-clockwise. So on the instructions, we like instructions, it shows you. So for counterclockwise, then it shows you how to orientate the flywheel. So looking at the stator plate here, there's some marks on it. You can see the marks better on here, so we want to go to the second main mark in, and we want the flywheel orientated in this direction. Okay, so what that means is, what we're going to do, so this mark is going to line up with this mark here when the piston is at 2 millimeters before top dead center. So what we're going to do is we're going to get this top dead center gauge, and we're going to put that in. We're going to screw that into the plug hole, and then we're going to rotate the engine until it goes to top dead center, and then we're going to rotate it manually with the crank. We're literally just going to turn it with our hand, and we're going to turn it 2 millimeters back from top dead center. So what we need to do, when this is at top dead center, we then need to mark where the 2 millimeters from top dead center is going to be. So I'll put this in, and we'll get it to top dead center, and then I'll show you exactly what I mean. Bit of a complication. So when this is in here, it doesn't actually fit. The frame is in the way. So I'm going to have to come up with a different solution. So there are different solutions. So one of them is that we do this with the head off. So that is one option. I've filled it all with coolant, obviously. So if I'm going to go down that road, I need to be draining it, or I could potentially turn down a piece of aluminium that would fit in here, but that is shorter, and that is probably the route I'm going to go down. So I'm just going to have a bit of a mooch around and see what I think the best job is. So what I've done basically is I've chopped the bottom off a 6-inch nail, so it does fit in perfectly well now. When I'm at top dead centre, which is at this point. So look, this is what I'm doing. I'm using the kickstart to turn the engine over, and I'm doing it very slowly. You can see that goes down, that goes down, 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 down. And what we're interested in is top dead centre. So top dead centre is right at the top, so the nail is going to start moving up. It does, and it's hard to do with one hand. And it moves up, and it moves up, and it moves up. And there, that is top dead centre. I can feel it. I can feel it in my hand. That the piston is basically stopped and it's just gone light. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to turn that slightly. And I'm going to mark it with a Sharpie. So I've got my mark as to where top dead centre is, all the way around. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get something that is 2mm, and I'm going to hold that up as I turn the engine back. So what do I mean by that? Well, when I say turn the engine back, so we saw, didn't we, that the engine rotated counterclockwise. So the engine rotates this way. We're now at top dead centre. We want to go 2mm before top dead centre. We're going to turn the crank 2mm back from this point here. So I'm going to get my 2mm thick piece of material, and I'm going to hold it up against here until there's effectively exactly 2mm gap between the mark that I've made in Sharpie pen and the top of the top dead centre tool. So that is difficult to do with one hand, and I will not be able to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rotate that. I'm going to get my piece of 2mm thick material, and I'm going to show you the measurement that I'm going to do. So there we go. So I'm going to turn the crank clockwise until I've got a 2mm gap. I hope that makes sense. Sorry, I've got that totally backwards. So as I turn the engine clockwise, because I'm stupid really, as I turn the engine clockwise, the nail is going to drop down again. So I want the nail to drop down 2mm exactly from where it was at top dead centre. So what I should have done is I should have used my 2mm thick piece of material, for which I'm using a 2mm drill bit, which I have checked with my micrometer, and it is 2mm. And what I needed to do was I needed to mark. So I needed to take its 2mm, take its top dead centre, put this on here, and then mark on the nail, and then take the drill bit away, rotate the engine backwards, so clockwise, until the mark lines up with the top of the top dead centre tool. So that's what I'm going to do now. Sorry for the confusion. So here we go. So I made the mark with the with the drill bit, and then I've rotated the engine back using the crank with my hands, and I couldn't do it with just one hand unfortunately, so I couldn't show you. And I've moved it back to where the mark is in line with the top of the top dead centre tool, so I know that this, as we are now, is 2mm before top dead centre. So I'm now going to get my flywheel in the correct orientation. So it's this mark on the flywheel that I want to line up exactly with the second larger mark in there, which is there. I'm now just going to tap that in gently, and then I'm going to tighten my nut up, and then we can attach the coil and the CDI and then see if she sparks. So I've used my plastic with a hole bored down it. I've tapped it on with the hammer so it's on firm, and now I've put my washer on and my nut, and I'm going to tighten my nut up until it's finger tight, and then I'm going to tighten it up with my impact driver, and then we're kind of ready to go really. Need to, like I say, we need to attach the coil and need to attach the CDI, and then we'll see if she sparks. We can check that she's not slipped by lining our mark up again and checking our mark that we've made on the nail corresponds with the top of the top dead centre tool, which it does. So we can now take that off, and then we can crack on. So I've mounted the coil, and you can see that the coil doesn't mount up to the mounting bracket on the frame properly. So when I've confirmed that everything's working, this is a mounting plate that comes with the kit. I'll cut that down, and I'll use that to bridge that gap and bolt it with two extra bolts. Screw the plug cap on, and now we can connect up the CDI. So there's 4 bits on the CDI. One is this little round connector here. That should have been mounted onto here on the coil, and then we've got this spade connector which attaches to the coil as well. This black and white wire, that goes to kill switch, and the kill switch also needs to connect to ground, so anywhere on the frame really. And then there's one plug that comes off the stator, which is here, which plugs directly into there. So I'll just go about connecting all those up. I'll take that little bolt off there, and I'll attach the CDI correctly, and then we can see if she sparks, huh? Okay, so got the coil mounted. Like I say, I'm going to make a bracket there out of the mounting plate. Mounted the CDI, so this connector comes off the stator, this wire here comes off the CDI, as does this wire on this spade connector, and I've then got one more wire from the CDI, which is this black and white one, which I'm going to connect up to a kill switch, which I'll just do now. So there'll be 2 wires coming off the kill switch. One will connect into that, and one will connect onto an earth. So I'll just find a decent earth to connect that to. And then I've confirmed that it does spark. You won't be able to see that on camera. So hopefully once I've done that, we'll be able to get her fired up. Okay, so the ignition's on. Hopefully I've shown you in enough detail. I've rebuilt the engine, sorted the gearbox and everything like that out. I have just had it running, started literally within 3 kicks, so you should enjoy this.